and welcome to our special series, The Town Hall, the program on which we bring you the biggest newsmakers face to face with a live audience of young voters. As the Narendra Modi government is about to officially complete 1 year in office, on the Town Hall today we'll be asking what have been its major hits and what have been its misses. Can it keep pace with the enormous expectations of its stupendous mandate in 2014? How is it performing on the economy? Has the India story changed abroad? And is it still in control of its messaging? This and much, much more. Let's introduce our guests on the Town Hall today. We are joined by Commerce Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, and we're also joined by Sachin Pilot, former Corporate Affairs Minister in the UPA government. Let's have a big round of applause to welcome them both to the Town Hall. I'll start with you, Ms. Sitharaman. If you had to look back and describe the biggest achievement and the biggest area of regret, in brief, what would it be in the last 1 year?
Biggest achievement I would think is till today, and I'm sure it's going to be so for next 5 years, is to have a government which is transparent and absolutely corruption free. Biggest
area of disappointment or unfinished business, that's a lot.
Well, there's a lot to do, and just 1 year is not sufficient. And I'm not sure we can even be faster than this. We are all of us putting enough effort, but maybe some areas can be moving faster than what it can or what it is doing now. But strictly speaking, no, I don't have any regrets. I think.
Has it been tough to keep pace with the enormity of expectations? The Indian voter seems to be getting more and more impatient, more and more restless. Has it been tough in government to realize that what you promised isn't that easy to achieve within a set deadline?
I wouldn't say it was tough. It is challenging to meet everybody's expectations. And I think to be fair to the people who expect things from us, all that they want is for you to constantly keep telling them how far you're moving. And in my case, I tried doing it, but I wish I can do more in terms of responding to people to say, look, this is how I'm doing, this is how we are moving forward. That's the challenge.
Sachin Pilot, your leader Rahul Gandhi perhaps disingenuously gave the government 0 out of 10 when he was asked to rate its performance. Is there anything, putting the rhetoric aside, that you would give the Modi government credit for?
I think every government is judged by what it promises versus what it delivers. And to my mind, in the last 1 year, and according to what you said, is the high level of expectations. The promises made it look like the government, if voted to power, would deliver goods and bring achhe din, within a few days. And I think that's the problem when people fall victims of their own propaganda. I think in the last 1 year...
But the biggest promise was a corruption-free India, and so far, 1 year on, there is no scam that attaches itself to this government, as Nirmala Sitharaman just said.
I think even in my government, and I was a minister in my government, if there was any wrongdoing that was detected, people were prosecuted, charge-sheeted, and put to charge according to what they may or may not have done. In this government, yes, there have been no large findings of such sort, but I think the promises were about bringing a better economic delivery, about bringing black money back, about lowering prices and eradicating corruption, the grassroots. I'm not convinced that just because there is no massive scandal in national media, that every part of our corrupt system has totally been eradicated.
It can't be in 1 year, no?
Yes,
that's
like I'm saying. So it's to say, is India corruption-free today because of the new government? I don't think that's true. In the last 1 year, many promises have not been delivered.
Give an example of one unfulfilled economic promise.
Well, look at the price of oil, for example. Food price inflation hasn't come down, no matter what the numbers indicate, but dal is still 100 rupees a kilogram. An 8th increase in the price of petrol and diesel, despite the international prices coming down so much, I think it's a reflection of how you promise more than what you can deliver.
Ma'am, inflation is down. Certainly the consumer price index is down. Fiscal deficit is lower than your own expectations. Growth is up, though some have questioned the new GDP formula. But Sachin says dal is still expensive. The achhe din for people who have to spend, careful money on dal, roti, sabzi have still not come. That's his allegation.
First thing first, inflation has been completely kept under control. If you want to talk about inflation in terms of only 100 rupees which is prevailing on dal and not on the figures because you suspect the figures, I think it's doing a disservice to the government, because these very figures were also not kept under control. If you think the figures are being kept under control by us, as is indirectly implied, I don't think that's fair, because after all, data is not generated by the Prime Minister, whether under their dispensation or any other dispensation. So figures are indicative of what is going on, and let's be clear, at least for nearly 6 months or even more, food inflation has been kept completely under control, and headline inflation with the core sectors also has never been lower than this even in the last 8 years. That's first thing first. Second, the growth figures or the figures that we are giving out are not just ours. International agencies, rating agencies, IMF, World Bank, they have nothing to gain by giving us any credits when we have not performed. These are figures which are now ratified and seconded by a lot of people that we are now on a growth trajectory, which has taken us far ahead of even China. And in the next year, we will be performing much better than China in terms of the rate of growth. These are not things which we are propagating.
There is a perceived confusion on what the economic philosophy of the Modi government is going to be. And I ask this because there were those who expected big bang reforms, and they're seeing gradualism, incrementalism instead. On the other side, there are those who are criticizing you for slashes in allocations to welfare schemes like the nutrition and water programs, where obviously the formula is that we'll give more money to the infrastructural sector, there'll be stimulus, and that'll pay for these welfare schemes. So the sense is that there's a confusion. And let me give you one example of the most recent confusion. FDI and multi-brand retail, right under your ministry. The document published on FDI does not get rid of the executive order that was passed by Sachin Pilot's government.
Yep.
You come on record and say there is no change in our position on FDI and multi-brand retail. We remain opposed to it. But the document published under your ministry still lists it as a government policy. Investors are confused. Why have you not moved to scrap FDI and multi-brand retail if your position remains the same on it? One newspaper editorial described it as reform by stealth. You want it, you don't want to admit you want it.
No, I don't think it's reform by stealth. It's certainly not reform by stealth. The document which came out from my ministry is a compendium of where FDI is in each of the ministries. So after all, if somebody wants to invest in India, they will have to go to some document or some one source from where they can understand what is the level of FDI permitted in various ministries. Each ministry does its own and gets cabinet approval, or if necessary, it has to go to the parliament. Everything has to be documented in one place, so it was a compendium which got released. And in the compendium, you're right, the UPA's executive order is the last decision, if at all, taken by any government, and that is there on record. Clearly, yes, you would say, and I agree, it leads to a bit of confusion because we have not withdrawn it, but I would want to underline that if there is any proposal, it has to go through the government route, it has to come to us for clearance, it has to go to the FIPB, if at all, after my ministry passes it on further, it has to go to the FIPB for clearance. We have not given even one clearance post our government coming, and nor has there been any application for FDI in multi-brand.
Are you going to remove it from the book, so to speak?
Well, if it is leading to a lot of confusion, I'll certainly go back to the government and all of us will sit together to say, remove it if it has to clear the air.
Brief rebuttal there?
I'm just not clear. Is this government for FDI and retail, or are you against FDI?
We are not in favor of FDI in multi-brand retail.
But you will continue to have it because we passed it.
No. It is a compendium which has put it in a milestone. It is a compendium, government being a continuum, milestones are recorded. And the last milestone, which was brought by stealth again, I would say, when the parliament was in session, the UPA government, which speaks so much about FDI and multi-brand retail, thought it would gain its own by coming through a stealth route. Parliament in session, they come out with an executive order. They talk of stealth? I'm sorry. We have at least the courage to say that's the last milepost, but we shall not clear any.
You acknowledge the confusion. Will you move to then remove it from the books? Because let me give you an example of Maharashtra, which under the Congress, because it's left to the states under their policy.
Right.
Maharashtra under the Congress welcomed it, under the BJP will not. So to rid the ambiguity around this issue, will you be removing it from the books going forward?
Kerala, for instance, under Congress didn't want it also.
Yeah,
Let's
fair
put the
enough.
counter case
Fair
there.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Will you be removing it from?
As I said, yes, I'll certainly go back and discuss in the cabinet about it, because if it is leading to this kind of a confusion, in spite of us not having entertained even one application, it's worth looking into to say whether we want to retract from what the UPA stealthily brought in.
You have been meeting with stakeholders in the e-commerce space, what is called e-tail as opposed to retail. Again, there is a question mark. Will you have a different standard for foreign direct investment in e-commerce? Will FDI in multi-brand retail be allowed in the e-commerce space? Because I know you've been having a series of meetings. You have companies like Amazon that are pushing for it.
The meeting that I had with e-commerce stakeholders was not just for the FDI issues. It also largely covered FDI related issues, but they had issues also with state governments, different state governments, on what actually is defined as e-commerce. Also to see how taxation works within state governments and e-commerce firms. So a whole lot of things came in that discussion, and I'm glad we discussed so many issues. We have not taken a position this way or that, but we certainly have assured that with the stakeholders of e-commerce, there shall be more meetings, just so we are very clear where we stand, because within India, with Indian money, there are very many smaller e-commerce firms which have a diametrically different position as compared to firms which have come with money from abroad.
So no decision yet?
No decision
Could it
yet.
go either way?
Fact,
Could it go either way?
because I also want the state governments to tell me what they are doing with them, because many of the state governments are dealing with e-commerce firms. Taxation related issues also are there between the state governments and e-commerce firms. I will have to do a lot more consultation.
So
before
no decision yet. And it could be state
I'm
the
keeping
same
my mind
rules as
open on
retail,
it.
it could be different rules.
No, I'm keeping my mind open, but also being cautious on two grounds. One, that it shouldn't become a backdoor entry for FDI in multi-brand retail itself, the brick and mortar kind, although it comes through the e-commerce route.
Yeah.
And the second, that shouldn't become a platform for more imports to come into India rather than promote Indian exports abroad.
Okay.
So keeping that in mind.
One question to you. You know, the government is being asked so many questions about their tax policy. They say again and again there are legacy issues, that your government has left them with this, tax terrorism legacy concerns. Your government actually left them with the MAT controversy. It was your rule. Do you as a modern young politician believe that one of the reasons you lost is because you were just not seen as a party of aspirational India? You were just not seen as a party that was liked by corporate India anymore.
I think
and you were a corporate affairs minister, so this is particularly germane to you.
Is obviously there, where there's something missing in what we are doing or not doing. But the more important fact is that we've moved 1 year beyond the last elections, and I think the blame of the previous governments will only last you so far. Very quickly people start judging you for your performance.
But do you stand by your tax policies?
I think
do you stand by your policies?
I think, Barkha, the policies of our government, I think broadly were good policy. There was nothing wrong in the policy. It was the communication, the imaging, the optics sometimes that perhaps wasn't as good as we'd like it to be.
But today this government is having to answer for policies that were introduced by you.
We were in government for 10 years. Out of those 10 years, 8 years, India grew at 8% or more of GDP according to the old standards. Now you change the baseline and you have a higher GDP growth. That's a different story. The only submission I want to make before you go on to your questioning is that, it's the propaganda and campaign time, you say different things, but people don't have such short memories also. You talk about the Indo-US nuclear deal and are against it, and now suddenly you think it's pivotal for Indo-US relationships. FDI and retail, there's ambiguity. Indo-Bangladesh territorial issues were all up in the air until we put all our work behind it, and Sushma Swaraj on floor of the House said that the previous government's work. So while you are blaming the legacy of the previous government, you must also give credit for a lot of things we've done. Mission to Mars didn't happen overnight. It was our government's initiation for the last 10 years.
Okay. Let me Sitharaman come in on that. Their optics were wrong, their policies were right.
I think at every given opportune moment, whether it's the Prime Minister or rightly as Sachin says, External Affairs Minister, Sushma Swaraj, has given credit where it is due. We've never denied that. We've never denied that. But we shall not take credit for the corruption which prevailed. We shall not take credit for the policy paralysis which prevailed. And I also very clearly upfront tell you, Sachin is absolutely right in saying we can't live by talking about legacy issues alone and not forever. We don't want to talk about it forever. But on retrospective taxation, which you're probably trying to refer
She has a question on that, so maybe we can hear her and then you can answer it.
But on that, it's not something which will fade away within 12 months.
Yeah.
We'll need to talk about it for longer. So where it is necessary for me to talk about legacy issue for longer, I would definitely do. But where I'm giving credit, we are giving ungrudgingly the credit. We have never, and when we do that, what is the answer given? Oh, you're copying our policies. I mean, choose for yourself what you want.
Okay, let's hear from Apurva. Yes.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am. My question is addressed to you. Quoting our Prime Minister's comeback speech in 2014 with regards to the tax policies of the previous government, he said, we shouldn't take decisions on a retrospective basis. We need to create confidence in our system, which such decisions defeat. Now, moving from that and drawing a parallel to the current government's earlier decision to pursue a 20,560 crore tax from Kane Energy as well as from Vodafone India, it has been a general feeling that the BJP government was unclear as to how to honor its last year's campaign pledge. So now with the Prime Minister's foreign trips to gain support for the Make in India campaign and the general unrest among foreign investors with regard to the unclear tax policy, how does the current government plan to work out a dynamics between a successful Make in India campaign and the label tax terrorism that the current government is also being blamed for?
And Arun Jaitley coined the phrase tax terrorism. So it's a bit ironic that today it's being used against, this government.
No, but let's be clear. I mean, I think that's a very good question to ask, because that gives me an opportunity to elaborate on how this government is viewing its economic policy. First thing, on the retrospective taxation related to that particular Vodafone case, I think the finance minister has made it more than clear that that particular case related, or that particular decision related, litigation related matters, we shall not be able to go in. But we are not going to go through the route of retrospective taxation, and that is why we shall not. But immediately, if you were to link it with the Keynes case, if there is genuinely an issue and it is not through a retrospective amendment to the law, but with the prevailing law, if there is a legal issue related to taxation matter, it's also worth going and seeing what's happening and talking with the enforcement's directorate, rather than go amend the law in retrospect and say, I want to raise that much of revenue from you because I've chosen to ask of you more. There is a difference between the two. The second one is more under the garb of, maybe with the prevailing rule, you were expected to pay so and so, you did not. We are certainly asking the question in retrospect. We are not amending the law in retrospect. There is a change. There is a difference in that.
Ms. Sitharaman, given that there have been ordinances to reverse previous legislative decisions, why was that fervor not shown for the retrospective?
Vodafone.
Yes, in Vodafone.
It was already in litigation. Several other, cases had already gone to the court. You couldn't, in such a case, take a decision. And again, even in fairness, you want to do it, there is always this danger of, are we taking it in the case of that particular company rather than the policy? So all this was, again, arbitration is going on.
The government initially defended the tribunal order on the 40,000 crores on MAT. Yeah. And then you found yourself on the mat, quite literally, from foreign investors. Do you acknowledge that was an issue that was mishandled, could have been handled differently?
No, that's right. But then I think what the finance minister has done, in all fairness, is to appoint this commission, which will go into it, and there will be a far more dispassionate and more recent debate. I wouldn't want to say debate because it's not public debate, a discussion and considered view taken on it, rather than, a political, okay, I've taken a call because it's anti-UPA. No, that's not what we're doing.
Okay, such in retrospective tax, the legacy of Pranab Mukherjee, now the president, but of your government. So why damn the NDA for a decision that was actually the UPA's cross to bear?
Well, I think the whole issue pertains to that one very talked about case of Vodafone. I think my party and other people have clearly said it many times that of all the decisions that we took, that was perhaps not the best one. And I stand by the fact that our tax policies, whether it's UPA
not
or
the
NDA...
best means it was a terrible decision for perception among investors. Right, terrible decision. Say the words, terrible decision.
Don't put words in my mouth. I think I've already conceded enough.
Not the best means what?
But the thing is, Barkha, tax policies have to be long-lasting and they can't change on a whim. Whether it's my party or her party, I think India's far greater than one or two governments. We have to have an investor confidence in our country where the tax regimes are stable, predictable, and policy changes happen because of genuine circumstances, not because of ideological differences. I think that's a mantra every minister and every government has to follow. Going forward, I think the finance minister
would you like to, if they were to bring it to Parliament to try and reverse the legislation, would your party support them?
Well,
You said it was not the best decision.
That decision lies with the government, how they put the law and the...
That's just quibbling.
No, we don't know what shape the law will take, what are the amendments they want to
Would
bring.
you consider bringing in a law to reverse it? So far, you have not considered that route.
So far, we have not done it, and also now that there's a commission, let it go through, and after the findings come out, we'll take a call on it.
Okay,
certainly, the one thing I would want to underline, the FM has repeatedly said it. We want to have a non-adversarial position and a simplified tax framework, and it is for that all of us are working. But that cannot be very quick and hastily put up. It has to be done with experts looking into it.
There are some reports that the government is considering a single window clearance for foreign investment, changing the current rules. I think it would be music to the ears of many in the corporate world if you can confirm that for us. Are you moving towards a single window clearance, a one-stop clearance for foreign investment?
Well, a lot of work is happening in terms of investment related decisions. Whether it is a single window or whether it is going to be e-decisions or whether it is going to be, this or that. Only we need a bit more time.
Okay, Shivish, your question.
Mr. Pilot, since the past year, we've seen quite a lot of statements coming in from the Congress government against the ruling party, which is the BJP. Well, my question is about the idea of ideal opposition, the concept of ideal opposition. Well, instead of living up truly to the spirit of an ideal opposition, what we've seen from the Congress party is baseless allegations which don't really have much foundation. And also let's say right now, some key documents, some key bills of the BJP party are being blocked in the Rajya Sabha because you enjoy a majority there. So sir, what do you think? Don't you think this explicit policy, this explicit destructive policy that you're taking as an opposition?
And let me put this to the audience before you answer it. How many of you think that the Congress is being a constructive opposition? A constructive opposition. And how many of you think it's just blocking legislation for the sake of it? Sachin.
Let me just answer the gentleman's question. I think you can't use the word obstructionism, you're obstructing things because we want to make the government accountable. If the BJP, before going to polls, is completely supporting a law, for example, the Land Act, after 3 years of deliberation, supports it in Parliament with complete unanimity, in 8 months wants to reverse it. If the government of the day is not made accountable through the parliamentary procedure, I wish to ask you, what other means in a democracy do you have for the voice of the people? And I'm not talking about just the Congress party, the entire opposition, farmers' unions, NGOs. If you want to ask the questions and make the government accountable and answerable, if it is not the parliament on the floor of the house, then where will it be? Where the BJP has a clear majority, there's no doubt they can pass any law they want. The question arises when a sensitive issue like the land ordinance, it is pushed through parliament. Not a single all-party meeting is called. If the BJP does a complete U-turn, I think I'm well within my right to pose the question. After the ordinance was passed, the question is, if you support something today because you want to win the votes of the farming community, 8 months later you want to change your position, then if we ask questions, it's not obstructing. It's saying you please come out with the correct answers and then we may have a debate on it.
This is just a random sample of audience. Right. They believe, or at least I would say 90% of them believe that you are blocking legislation for the sake of opposition, not for the sake of the issue.
Who passed the insurance bill, FDI and defense, all of that were allowed to pass because we thought they were good legislation. Where we need clarification and accountability, we will ask.
Okay, Ms. Sitharaman, let me reverse the question to you. Has the land ordinance proved to be, in a sense, a political gamble that hasn't paid off? Have you invested too much political capital on it? Has the opposition succeeded in putting you on the defensive, where the anti-farmer, anti-poor label, the soot boot ki sarkaar jibe is tailing you?
On the land bill, love me. Could you not have more discussions? Could you not spend more time? We are already being held within 1 year saying you're not moving fast enough. Expectations are so high, you're not doing much. One. Second, what is Sachin's argument on this break? You supported the bill and within 1 year you want to change it? Within 1 year, how many Congress chief ministers have come up to say, sorry, we are not able to acquire land? I can name them. Just because we are in a public forum, I won't. But certainly, it is public knowledge. It was discussed in the parliament.
Several letters from Congress chief ministers
saying we cannot do any kind of infrastructure related programs because it's just sheer impossible to get land. So yes, we did support because it is important to have relief and rehabilitation and compensation given properly to farmers. We supported the bill. It's not just because we wanted the vote. We also want the vote, you also want the vote, and therefore all of us will be in it. But we certainly supported because we thought we needed some kind of a compensation giving framework. But let me also remind you that the compensation giving kind of Qanun which prevailed in Gujarat was even praised in the Supreme Court, by the Supreme Court, saying please follow it, it seems to be less arduous.
So why have you sent it to a joint committee instead of calling a joint? I know that for a joint sitting it first has to be defeated in Rajya Sabha, but why not explore that route? If you believe so firmly in your changes, why not pursue that route instead of another committee?
I'll also add one more. For the Congress which is now pointing out, saying how did you bring in those 13 legislations which were not earlier, and why did you want to give farmers the 13 Qanun which were kept outside of this land bill, as was passed by the UPA, kept it out in such a way that if they were to acquire under any one of those Qanun lands, farmers would not get the relief. We brought it in to say you should get compensation even under the 13 of them which have been bypassed or kept aside, saying we'll do it some other time. They bought time on it. And if you want, I mean, I can't take all your time to say what the Congress's argument was at that time. I would refer you all to please go through an interview Sri Jairam Ramesh had given in Frontline, the magazine, sometime in 13 September, October, justifying, and he uses the word, oh, that's the real politic. After all, we'll have to also go for elections. If that's done by them, and at that time, in spite of that, we wanted to support it because we needed some framework for compensation. That's not wrong. But after 1 year, with so much of discussion, with so much of hardship for states to acquire land, for us also to promote any kind of irrigation for farmers, any kind of thermal plants or anything, if you're not able to move forward, shouldn't we amend that?
But quick response from you, Sachin, on the Congress chief ministers. They are on record. We've seen those letters.
I just want to clarify one thing, Barka. In this country, anybody can go and buy land for private use. There is no problem. And let me clarify my party's position. We want investment, factories, job creation, all of that must happen. The problem is when the government becomes an agency to acquire land, which has been put to private use. I think airports, railways, highways, ports, no one has any argument. But when the farming community is not asked, land is taken away, the farmer can't seek compensation through the courts.
So why couldn't you convince your own chief ministers of this?
It is an enabling. So state governments can have a more stringent law, but it's a concurrent subject. So government of India has to pass the law. All I'm saying is, all my party is saying is that please go ahead with it. But should not the farmer get market price for it? Why should he not be able to negotiate with the industrialist what the market price offer? And why acquire fertile land? 40% of India's land is irrigated. There is a food security issue. There's a humanitarian issue. And I believe it's become political because of the arrogance of the government. Now, I respect Nirmala ji. She's one of the most, I think, minister who studies the subject. But I can't say the same about her colleagues. Some of them have been saying things that creates a very negative perception.
Give an example.
You want me to take names and embarrass her? I don't think so.
I don't think she's easily embarrassed.
Well, you don't know. You don't know. Barka, we are not as thick-skinned as you think we are. This has become political because I think the government felt they could bulldoze it through. There are allies of the NDA which realize that the agrarian economy is failing, and that is why there are people within the NDA who are opposing it. And let me tell you, there is a reason why Mr. Amit Shah today says, let us go and correct the perception that we are anti-poor. Why is that happening?
Quick rebuttal there. Could
Farmers,
you have taken a different route other than an ordinance? That's what he's calling arrogance.
No. Oh, ordinance is arrogance? What was FDI in multi-brand retail, even as the parliament was in session? Wasn't that an executive order? That was arrogance.
The country for it?
Wasn't.
It's politically sensitive, ma'am. That's what I'm saying. This is something that you have to use your political nuance.
It is not arrogance. If you are in a hurry to meet with certain agenda, that's one other thing. But we are here to meet the expectations of the people who want reform to be pushed. You can't be sitting in a country asking for FDI, asking for better infrastructure, asking for power generation.
Are you damned if you do and damned if you don't? Is that the kind of conundrum the government is in right now on reform?
When the party's chief has said correct the perception,
yes,
we are out here to say that the disinformation campaign which the Congress is running against us, that we are against the farmer, I want to, and my party president is quite right in saying, go correct the perception, because aren't the farmers entitled to better compensation? Aren't the farmers in their villages expecting power to be generated and given to them 24/7? And my argument here is, if we are telling that the farmers will not be given market rate. I want to tell you, we are saying in this, we give 4 times more if they give it. But let's also add here, this perception that fertile lands are going to be taken away, not at all. If anything, I would even ask the UPA to explain why so much of land was given under SEZ programs that many of the SEZs are sitting with unutilized land till today. And I'm being asked in the parliament as to what are you going to do about these SEZ excess lands which are sitting? Did I procure them? I'm sorry. Where were the UPA's concern for the farmers at that time? Were they not important lands? And above all, if you're really talking about farming communities, let us understand in the last 10 years of UPA, how much of farm needs were taken. The statistics which is coming out by the party's vice president, I'm sorry to say, I would have every one of them argued, debated and shown that they're false.
Again, to come back to the tax regime. Even on personal income tax, there was a lot of confusion. There were reports about people having to disclose, to make their foreign spending on foreign trips, part of their income tax returns. Are you being driven or are you still trapped by the bureaucracy?
On the tax forms, income tax return forms that there was a debate about, which I remember the FM had called the Revenue Secretary even as he was in Washington or New York, and from there instructed him that he would definitely review the situation. I just want to give you one line, that this time the forms, when they were being discussed, there was also this concern that tracking black money generation within this country also is an issue. And in some of the matters where cash transactions happen, maybe also as one of the recommendations of the SIT, which is looking into black money and black money related issues, they would have wanted maybe to gather information on these lines. So the income tax returns, this time the forms maybe had excessive 1 or 2 pages added on to what was already a cumbersome returns filing mechanism. But I'm glad that the FM immediately responded and said we'll try to simplify it, we would not ask.
Quick response and then Prashant can ask his question.
I'm just waiting for that 15 lakh rupees that has to come to every family's account, that they said that in 100 days we'll bring the money back. BJP never promised that we are going to pass a law. They said we'll bring it back. And then Mr. Amit Shah says that was a political speech. I think as far as black money is concerned, the government had promised far more than it could deliver. And they knew very well the treaties, the laws, the legislation that needs to be done.
But at least they moved further than you did.
Well, they said 100 days will bring it back. We are saying we'll support you in every effort.
But the rhetorical statements made during elections are not to be the literal imprints of governance.
But then you say that's rhetorical. Don't put it in a manifesto.
No, I'm saying Congress is as guilty of BJP as any other party of rhetoric in an election.
No,
have they moved further on black money than the Congress did?
The point is the money back in 100 days?
We are not running away from our responsibility to work to get the black money back. But to now speak as though, I mean, sometimes I want to use some expressions which I'm sure you'll pardon me.
I'm not sure, but...
use them.
Childish. You will definitely say we'll get the black money, and if there is a discourse in a public rally, what would be the quantum of black money? Andasa say, you will tend to say this will be per person this much. That is what is, Transparency International and a whole lot of bodies have given the figure. So you want to transfer that in terms of how much is it per person. Then you put in words into our mouth to say, oh, that means if in each one of our direct benefit transfer based on Aadhaar, we will give you 15. I mean, come on. Let's be responsible Indian citizens who are working to get legitimately what is our money, which is being kept abroad.
Prashant, your question.
Good evening. My question is to ma'am. Ma'am, Mr. Arun Shourie in a recent interview has gone ahead and said that the government has been making a huge amount of flip-flops, especially on the MAT issue, and the entire economic policy is incoherent and makes it look like a bully, that you take a decision on MAT and then when the foreign investor says we won't be able to invest, you retract back. In that context, don't you think that the so-called low-hanging fruits that the government was saying we are going to cherry-pick the moment we come forward, in this past year have been missed, and hence this past year has been one of missed opportunity and not something that we have been able to deliver on economic policy coherently?
The past year has not been a missed opportunity. The past year has a lot of things which I can claim with a certain sense of pride that we have moved with firm-footedness. The inclusiveness of this government's economic policy is very clearly explained by the Jan Dhan program. You may say, oh, this program existed even during UPA, but what was the coverage they could manage? Whereas here within 10 months, the Prime Minister has shown if you really have the commitment, you can bring in every citizen to have financial inclusion. And we didn't stop with just giving the account. We've also now come up with 3 welfare measures in which, even as of now, it was launched only 10 days ago, more than 6 crore people, 6.7 crore or something as of yesterday, have been covered under these 2 insurances and 1 pension scheme.
Were you upset with fellow traveller Arun Shourie criticizing the government in the terms that he did?
Personally, I've had a lot of opportunity to work with him from the party's side, and I respect him a lot for the rigor of research which he follows, the kind of research he does before he speaks and writes. With that said, that rigor was missing while he criticized the government this time. Because his claims that these figures are just hype. I'm sorry, these are figures given by the institutions which are government-related institutions. It's not Modi or it's not me, it's not anybody generating the figure. Take those figures, check it up. Check it up with agencies which have also cross-verified them and speak. That would be Arun Shourie for me.
Why is he angry with the government?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. So I was disappointed that if he was coming with criticism, I wanted to hear it. I sat that night. I was actually back home doing something in with my family. I said, sorry, I'm going to watch this. I watched it. I was very disappointed. I would have loved to hear anything that he says with an intention of wanting to go back and work and correct a course. But I'm sorry. I was disappointed.
Sachin, is the Congress now going to take to quoting Arun Shourie, who's been the most trenchant critic of the Congress, to try and attack the BJP?
No, I don't have to do
Politics
any of that.
has many ironies.
I want to make a different point though, Barkha. You know, our Prime Minister has travelled to many countries in the last 1 year. And when you travel as Prime Minister, you go as Prime Minister of India. We've had many Prime Ministers before, I'm sure we'll have more. One thing that has been the norm in the last 60 years has been that whenever you travel abroad, you talk about the nation. You don't talk about domestic politics. And I think I felt a little disappointed when I heard the Prime Minister talk as if he was making election speech overseas. On foreign soil, you don't talk down your country, whether it's the previous government or whether it's judicial issues, taxation issues, or even so-called
Though to be
issues.
accurate, he made those comments when addressing the diaspora and not in any bilateral forums.
In today's world, when you speak on foreign soil with social media and television, internet, you're basically talking to everybody. And I felt that was a little bit unbecoming of a Prime Minister to go out. You know, he's got full majority. He's traveling all over the place because he's been invited to. That's his decision. But I think on foreign soil,
it's
we
a
can
fair
have,
question, and I must allow the minister
I'm
to
saying
respond,
that he and I have differences, but he's also my Prime Minister. Me and Nirmala ji can talk about policy issues on this program, but when you're outside the country, I think decency demands that you really talk about the nation and not about our internal
Let Nirmala
politics.
Sitharaman respond to this. You know, social media, which the Prime Minister is a big advocate and user of, huge backlash coming in on comments made that earlier there used to be a shame associated with being Indian. Now there's no such shame. There's hope and optimism back. Could the Prime Minister have made the point about hope and optimism without deriding the past, without deriding the opposition? Of course, he's free to. He's also the BJP leader. He's free to deride the opposition on domestic soil. Did he need to do that outside India?
You know, I'll give a positive and a negative reply for this. Negative in the sense that will be scoring a point every time, right? Have the Congress's representatives, foreign ministers and others who went abroad never criticized India? I can give you a number of examples. Never mind, that's my negative argument, which I don't want to put on the top of the agenda. The positive side. Today's world is so well connected. You say it in India through your social media, it's available everywhere. You go abroad and say it, it's available there too and here too. But the fact remains, and this is a hard fact, the image of India had suffered. You want us to pretend? You want us to pretend to go abroad and say, all right, it's all right, we are doing a good lot of work. No, sorry. The kind of good work that we want to do now is starting from correcting the image, and no harm. He has not said it, overboard. He's mentioned it in passing together with so many other things that he speaks for good for India.
But has he gone too far in that
Absolutely
rhetoric?
not. The Congress feels too far. I have to accept it. No chance. If they were so sensitive to keeping the image of India proper, I wish the last 5 years of Indian image was kept in mind when those rampant corruption happened.
Sachin.
I think I will stand by what I said, because domestic politics, Mr. Modi can give a speech in Patna in Delhi, election campaign is no issue at all as a BJP leader. But once you take oath as India's Prime Minister, you're representing 1.2 billion people. You've got to uphold the position of the country when you go there. You can score brownie points in India, no one's stopping you. And he's anyway in election mode all the time, that's fine. But outside India, you've got to be able to give the outsider the image that India is one country. You can't take our fault lines from here, take it abroad, and you see, what advantage do you get, except for the supporters of the party in Delhi or in India clapping hands for it, but outside it must not look like we're a fractured nation. That's not what you're supposed to do as Prime Minister. That's my opinion, ma'am.
Excuse me. Are we talking about a fractured nation? Are we talking about keeping image of India abroad proper? Elected Chief Minister Narendra Modi was denied a visa. I'd like to ask how many of the Congress's representatives or Prime Minister took it up in such a way that you cannot deny, you cannot treat my Chief Minister properly, you cannot treat my Chief Minister in this way as to insult the nation's elected Chief Minister? How many UPS did that? Let me ask that question. One. Second, when 63 odd members of Parliament wrote even to some US senators saying, no, you should not allow this man to come there to the US. How many from the Government of India, Ministry of External Affairs, stood up to say, sorry, he's an elected constitutional head, you will not write letters, 63 MPs, stay put here, it is no fracturing of this country, let us speak, I'll sort it out here. You don't want him to go? We'll stop him, we'll counsel him, but don't write to somebody else abroad. Did you all stop him? Did you all stop the 63 MPs? No. Happily sat back to watch the fun. Let these MPs go and stop the man. Where were you all at that time? Where were you all at that time?
If another country takes a decision to give a visa or not to give a visa, that's that country's problem.
But did you intercede? I think her question is, from the applause of the audience, I think there are elements that are striking a chord, perhaps depending on which point of view you're approaching this. So let me ask you, her question is also fair. When an elected head of government, irrespective of what you may think of his politics as the Congress party, was denied a visa by a country that you were in many bilateral dialogues with, did you as the representative of India ever intercede on behalf of the Gujarat Chief Minister?
You can't demand another country to give a visa, not to give a visa. That's that country's decision. But as Prime Minister of India, you have a certain responsibility. And by the way, convention dictates that's a norm to follow. If the government of the day feels that that's not to be done, that's their decision. I'm only stating my opinion.
Ma'am, let's say the Congress made
Just 1 minute. I fully understand it's the prerogative of the country to give visa or not give the visa. But did we at least protest? Did we at least mention that you're insulting an Indian Chief Minister? Second, that's about the country which has to give visa. But 63 MPs, yeah? Among whom you had your own MPs. Couldn't you counsel your MPs? You're talking about an elected Chief Minister? No, sir. Today, anything that Modi does will have to be criticized. Whereas when it was all in their times, no, that's how, freedom and everything else. Double standards to the core, and let us not be lectured on how to keep the image of India abroad better. We are doing our job. You may please cooperate with us, but if you're criticizing, criticize us on sound logic.
Was when Mr. Obama came here, why didn't Mr. Modi ask him, Mr. Obama, why did you deny me visa? So you don't ask yourself because you want to be best friends with him now, but when you are outside in foreign soil, you
this
must
is very lame. I expect more from Sachin.
No, Nirmala ji, why should you? How can you blame Manmohan Singh when the Americans are now giving your Chief Minister a visa?
Let me put it to you like this, and then we'll move on. Maybe. And I can see the logic of your argument that irrespective of differences of opinion with Mr. Modi's politics, as India, we should have said another country can't block an elected political leader. They messed up. Has the Prime Minister also made an error of judgment in taking his political rhetoric to a foreign stage? That is a limited question. Could he have just held back on that till he came back home?
I've said my answer for this.
And you stand by that?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. One of the things that catapulted the BJP into power, in my opinion, was a very masterful communication strategy. Do you believe today that you are in danger of having those headlines hijacked, not by the Congress, not by the opposition, but by many within your own fold? That when a minister in your cabinet talks about Haramzadeh or Ramzadeh, when Sakshi Maharaj talks about people having, the Hindu women should have 4 children. 5 children. When you can accuse the media of having over-amplified or exaggerated or distorted the church attacks, which the BJP has argued, and many have turned out to be examples of routine law and order, but there also, why is the perception going wrong? Are you facing messaging issues today because of these issues?
As regards people who are speaking, particularly the ones you've quoted, I think the party and the Prime Minister has repeatedly said that that is not what they stand by. To raise this repeatedly saying your fringe group speaks, or some group which attacks somebody because they take the name of Hindu, it has to be BJP, doesn't add up. We are very clear that the government and the party very clearly speaks out when it has to pull up somebody or to say that these are not our words. So there's no issue there. But the worry is, much before the truth is established, I take the example of the church attacks, attributing it to a certain section, and they have done this, and the trial happens. And when the facts come out, it has nothing to do with them. The damage is already done in terms of building a certain perception. And of course, the party spokesperson, the government, everybody then come to say, look, didn't we say? Just hold on. So some realities which you have to face, some where you have to fight back, all this happens.
Quick response there, and then we'll take the question.
I think to call a minister in the cabinet or a sitting member of parliament a fringe element is really stretching it, because when you hear today's media is so powerful that when a Sakshi Maharaj or a Sadhi Niranjan Jyoti or a right-wing leader of the BJP of a member of parliament status says something, and nobody, he can say something, she can say something, but nobody up in the echelons of power reprimands that person sufficiently so that they stop saying these things. Repeatedly these things are said, and I think they attract attention because that is not what the agenda of the government of BJP was when they were campaigning. It was investment, job creation, transparency, etc., etc. And now it comes about Ram Temple, love jihad, ghar wapsi, conversions, beef banning. All these issues are taking center stage slowly, because I think there are many powerful groups within the Sangh Parivar that cannot be suppressed, no matter how strong the government is.
A quick response from the minister, and then Vishwam, please stand with your question.
Sachin is happily bringing together so many issues which are of different levels. On the beef ban, it's a Maharashtra government's decision, and they've explained it more than one or two times. If you're talking of Garvapasi and conversion, Barka, I'm sure NDTV itself has had several debates on it. If you want to have a debate on conversion, let it be. Let us have it, rather than be told, Garvapasi is wrong, but conversion is right.
But
who's talking about all this?
Ma'am, but the Prime Minister himself went on record to say that the Constitution grants everybody the right to not just practice but also propagate religion. Then does the RSS chief's comments make it a very dichotomous situation?
Absolutely not. I think on conversion, all of us are clear. Prime Minister has very clearly stated what he wanted to state.
Vishwam, go ahead.
So the Congress has been incessantly blaming the government for action against Robert Vadra, and it seems to be the party's only defense. Also, the party's remarks indicate disrespect for the Indian judicial system. So does the party have any face-saving explanation on this issue, and is it really questioning the judicial procedure of India?
Well, Haryana government now has an official inquiry into Mr. Vadra's land dealings. My question to you is, doesn't Robert Vadra dent Rahul Gandhi's diatribe about the soot boot ki sarkaar? Because the moment he said that, I mean, it may have been a catchy political slogan, but the immediate comeback from the BJP was, and one of the ministers even went on record to say, was he talking about his own brother-in-law?
Well, I think it's easy for the government to start talking about Mr. Vadra every time tough questions are asked. As far as that case is concerned, everybody has said that have an inquiry, but don't just talk about it. Have the inquiry now. The Haryana government has put in an inquiry within 6 months. There is a government of BJP in Rajasthan, government of BJP in New Delhi, government of BJP in Haryana. Nothing is stopping them from taking the action they think they should take. But that's not a political issue. The political issue that we today raise up in Parliament is about the ordinances, about the farmers' plights. That issue, I think,
isn't it an imaging issue? And and we haven't spoken about Rahul Gandhi except for Nirmala Sitharaman questioning his statistics. But he's now taken his fight on this food park to the Home Minister. He's written a letter. He's called it Badla ki Rajniti. Whereas the government has produced many key facts to show that actually it was your government that dragged its feet. It was your government that couldn't even get a gas supply line. That it was shut down and dried up in the UPA tenure.
Any large project will miss certain deadlines. Does the current government want to cancel all projects that exceed deadlines? It's been done primarily to show that, here is a most important Congress leader, and we have the political will to cancel that project and nothing will happen. I think the people of that area, forget about New Delhi, but Amethi and 10 districts around that have understood that this has been done as a political, vindictive step taken by the government. No matter what statistics they give, the project missed a deadline. It doesn't mean it merits cancellation. That's been done because of political rivalries.
The government did not cancel it at one go. When it came to the NDA government post 2014 May, it was given one more extension to prove that they can do it. And it is only after that. It's not as if 26th May we formed the government, 27th we've gone in hunting for Amethi and said, oh, this is an important political person, cancel it. No. You have given 6 extensions, so 7 extensions in which they did not prove that they could do it. You have not extended
Why
gas
couldn't you give it one more
facilitation.
extension?
That's what I'm saying. Post-May, we've given one more extension, and after that, when still it didn't happen, you had to take a call. But 6 had happened during their period. Gas was not given during their period. And after that, they decided in 2013 that this is not viable. And then the blame is on us of vindictiveness after having given one more extension after coming in May. So, I think there is desperation.
Quick response, and also on the larger issue of how Rahul Gandhi seems to have appeared re-energized after his mysterious vacation.
But tell me if a member of parliament...
He's spoken more in this 1 week of parliament than he's spoken in the last 10 years.
Well, I think what he's doing is certainly... Whatever Mr. Gandhi is doing is certainly upsetting the BJP, so he's doing something right. And as member of parliament, if it happened in my constituency, I would certainly ask the government that why are you cancelling it? I think that justification that because gas wasn't given, now we have given one extension, it's no favor. If you don't want to make the food park, just say it, and you've cancelled it. Now there is a political fallout. Whether it's in UP, elections are coming in about a year and a half's time, that time will tell. But as a member of parliament in Lok Sabha, if you get up and say, well, my constituents were going to benefit by this project, what is wrong in asking why you cancelled it?
Very interesting that you say that. During the UPA 2, how many times did Rahul Gandhi choose to stand up in the Lok Sabha and say, my Amethi, my food park, my minister, you're not doing. You're not doing.
It wasn't cancelled.
Not cancelled, but did it happen? 6 extensions were given. Gas was denied. Why couldn't he stand up and ask Veerappa Moily, sir, my ministry, my Amethi, why are you cancelling my government?
Respond to his political point that Rahul Gandhi is making all of you respond. Is he getting under your skin? Did the suit boot ki sarkaar jibe kind of pinch?
I'll tell you something. I'm glad he's speaking. Even though you said, oh, 10 years he didn't speak, now he's speaking. Yeah. As vice president, I want him to speak. But let him speak with substance. Let him not mislead the public of India with false statistics. Leave me. Take Times of India, sometime 10-15 days ago, in the front page under the banner, every one of the claim of Sri Rahul Gandhi was mentioned and the falsehood in it was established. Established by a newspaper, sir, not me.
Okay.
Why would that happen?
Okay. Now, I'm going to take 2 questions together and then get closing comments from all of you. We have a question from Combe Carpentier. I hope I'm saying your name right. You're the expat editor of the International Journal for World Affairs. If we can get him a mic, please. And then I'll take another question together and we'll get closing comments. Yes, please.
Good evening. I'm convener of the journal, not editor.
Can you hold it closer, please?
Yes. My question is about of course, it's tied to the nature of parliamentary system, but I see both the BJP and the Congress converging towards what I might call a centrist nationalist development agenda. And right now the differences seem more polemical and rhetorical than real, except perhaps on cultural issues. But with regard to foreign policy and with regard to economic policies, don't you think there is a lot of convergence? And if you get past the rhetorical score.
That's very interesting, that all parties are compelled to move towards the center.
Right.
Can we just take the last question and you can answer that together? Shahrukh?
Do you not believe that India granting e-visas to Chinese tourists while they grant stapled visas to citizens of Arunachal Pradesh is in any way not changing the status quo which BJP promised to do so when they were portraying Mr.
We'll start with the second question first.
I think it was a gesture and it was a good gesture. What came in reciprocal arrangement or what was the response of the Chinese, I would rather wait to know the full details before I comment. But the approach of this government has been that as much as possible, even in Canada, even in the US, we are taking a very, very constructive, positive approach towards every one of our countries with whom we want to strengthen our relationship.
Sachin, last point, very interesting there, an observation that Indian politics tends to move every party actually towards the center, that when you pare it down, There isn't that much of a divergence in the politics that India has come to embrace.
I think depends party to party. I don't think the Congress party has really pretended to be something we are not. Reforms in the 90s with Narasimha Rao as Prime Minister, then Manmohan Singh ji, it has been pretty open about what we need to do on the economic agenda, on foreign policy. Now, I dare say the BJP, I think, has done many somersaults, whether it's forming governments in Kashmir, Article 370, Uniform Civil Code. So that movement happens when the BJP comes into power. In opposition, it has a very, I think, right-wing agenda which caters to the core ideology of the RSS, perhaps to keep them happy. But once you are in government, like Mr. Bajpayee did, he did move to the center. And I think same pressures apply on the Prime Minister Modi as well, because he also has to move to center, because India is like that. You can't function from the fringes.
Okay. Nirmala Sitharaman, the last word to you. The next year ahead, what's going to be the key priority? Is it economics, the economy?
Yes, largely. We will certainly be pushing ahead with the reforms.
And will it stop being incremental? Will we see dramatic shifts?
Well, I think it's like when you're building your house, the foundation takes a bit longer, and after that, the movement is faster.
An absolute pleasure to have two politicians and a minister and a former minister being willing to debate all issues in such a civilized manner. We wish we could have more of you on television. We miss you on television, Nirmala Sitharaman. A big round of applause for both our guests on the Town Hall today.